Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building a High-Performance Culture with Ken Thoreson. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great presentation planned for you. My name is Tony Gonzalez with Lead Lifter, and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, I'd like to cover just a few things. This webinar is roughly 30 to 45 minutes in length, followed by a very brief Q&A period. So as we go through the presentation, please post your questions in the section on the right, and we'll either address them at the end of the session or if they're urgent as we go along. I do see that we have many Lead Lifter clients joining us today. I appreciate that. For those of you not familiar with Lead Lifter and our tool EchoQuote, we provide a service that captures prospects who visit your website. Now, we've teamed up with Ken because of his commitment to building a high-performance sales culture, while we seek to give those sales professionals a means through qualified leads to help build that sales culture. And so what I'd like to do is give you some background on Ken. Ken Thoreson is the president of Acumen Management Group, a sales leadership professional who operationalizes sales management systems and processes to pull sales results out of the doldrums and into the fresh zone of predictable revenue. Over the past years, his consulting, advisory, and platform services have really elevated his sales efforts for companies throughout North America, all the way from small and emerging companies through transitional, as well as even your high-growth companies. Prior to founding Acumen, he actually led development stage entrepreneurial and 250 million national vertical software sales organizations as a vice president of sales. He's also the author of numerous books and articles, active blogger, as well as a columnist for Redmond Channel Partner magazine. So with that introduction, I'd like to go ahead and turn the mic over to Ken for today's presentation. Ken, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tony. I'm excited to be with everyone today to take a look at a subject called building a high-performance culture. We're going to address organizational ideas. We're going to address leadership issues, as well as we're going to address personal issues, because I have a firm belief that the organization can have a positive culture, but it also has to start with you, the individual. As Tony talked about, there's a lot of focus there, and I just really wanted to share this slide before we get into the program to provide you information of really where I'm coming from. We've been working with over 14 years now, consulting with businesses. We've seen hundreds of thousands of salespeople and other marketing individuals that we've spoken to on the platform, consulted with one-on-one, or have been involved with from our blog and newsletter. Our blog, Your Sales Management Guru, has been rated in the top 10 in the United States, so if you're in sales leadership and sales management, that might be a great resource for you. My newsletter now, it's been going on for 6 years every month, Why Sales Managers Succeed. Terrific ideas where we talk about personal commitment, professional commitment, and organizational commitment. So the ideas and thoughts that we're going to share with you today are real world. So I'm going to start the program really by asking each of you a personal question. If you had it to do over again, what would you do differently, if anything? If you had it to do over again, what would you do differently, if anything? Now that's a question I've asked salespeople and sales managers over the years as we put them through workshops, coached them after sales calls, after presentations. What would you do differently if you had to do over again? Now I'm not here today to coach you around sales management topics. I'm here to coach you individually on how to build a high-performance organization. It begins with you, both from an attitude perspective as well as a professional perspective. And I think that's all very important to figure out because, you know, you can't change the way you lived your life, but you can change the way you live your life. And I think that's an important element as we think about how do we start off this new year, 2014, but how do we really start to say, how am I going to bring high performance to myself and to my organization? And it really does start with attitude and doing it on a day-to-day basis. Now, today, I happen to be terrific because it's Tuesday. But one of the things I find a lot of times when people say hello to each other, they go, hi, how are you? I'm fine. And they never even hear the comments. There's no connection, no emotion exchanged. So I built a little saying I want to share with each of you, and I hope that you take this and use this in your day-to-day communication, because culture and high-performance individuals have a different type of attitude. On Mondays, you can be marvelous. Tuesdays, you're terrific. Wednesdays, you're wonderful. Thursday you're going to be tremendous, Friday you're fabulous, and Saturday you're super. I think that's a very important element as you think about your life and your business and how to move from that perspective. You want to make sure you're thinking about each of these issues. So when someone says to you today, Tony, how are you going to be? Tony, you're going to be terrific. And I think tomorrow you'll be wonderful. Thursday, when someone says, how are you, Tony, you can say, I'm tremendous, how are you? And it'll put a little bit of energy in your voice. It'll put a little smile on everybody's face, and it's a way to move through the organization. So let's talk now about organizations. Let's talk about how you start to build a high-performance organization and a high-performance life. Organizations that I've seen over the years who are really successful really have these 5 areas of focus. They're focused on right and good management decisions. They're focused on their people and building their culture. So I appreciate each of you who are coming to this session today. They focus on high levels of activity and the right activity levels, not just motion, but direction. They also are focused about what happens to the customers they're dealing with. Are the customers happy, satisfied? Are we achieving the results we promised and expect from our products or solutions with our customers? And obviously they're focused on their company results, profitability, revenue growth, whatever it may be. Those are the 5 areas. If you break it down and execute well in each one of those areas, you begin to build. Now, normally in a workshop environment, we would stop and talk about each one of those 5 elements, ask you to take an assessment and score each of those. The assessment's on my website and it's free, but we want to really understand how you go through this and figure out how to do each of these elements. So I'm going to share with you today some of those ideas. Number 1, leadership. Leadership is an important element, and as an executive, as a sales leader, a marketing leader, as a salesperson, a marketing person, whatever your role is today, leadership is important, and it's different than management. What we see a lot of time is you think you're leading your team, and all of a sudden you turn around and the team is gone. And what we want to do is prevent that, and a lot of times we haven't studied leadership enough to understand what it's all about. But we believe it starts here in starting to put together the performance. In a high-performance environment, you have a role of management and leadership, and you're focused on strategy, and you're focused on what are the tactics I need to do to achieve my results. And so they all have to be tied together in order to make all of these things roll. However, the missing element is execution. Now, there's a great book written by Larry Bossidy called Execution. If you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. It's called Execution because we've seen a lot of people with good strategy or a written plan of tactics that never got executed. So it's important you focus on all 4 of those facets as you start to look at your organization, your job, your role, and say, what am I working on? Today we're focused on the role. The role is really the emotional element of your job, whether selling, marketing, leadership, management, whatever your role is. The role is important. We're not going to talk about business strategy. We're not going to talk a lot about tactics. I'll share a couple ideas with you in that area. But we really want to talk about the role, the emotional aspect of how do I build a high-performance culture. Because that's really what we're talking about. It's really getting everybody to pull on that rope in the same direction and win. And if you notice the picture, everybody's smiling. Everybody's having fun. And if it isn't fun, you're also having a problem in your culture because that's one of the elements you need to build into the program. You want to get results not in 90 days, but over a long-term aspect. So it's critical as you think about all the things that have to happen, you want to make sure you get your leadership right. Now, there are 5 styles of leadership, 5 styles of management. But the important part of leadership's definition, as you see it on the screen, is it's taking a stand on and addressing the important issues and acting as a catalyst for change and continuous improvement. That's the definition. The ability to make things happen by encouraging and channeling operation. That's an important element. The leader has to see what needs to be fixed, has to have a vision, and be able to work on that. Now, there's a telling style where the leader simply says, here's what we're going to do, and this is what I want expected of you. That's okay sometimes, but it's not used all the time. There's also a selling style of leadership where the leader knows what they want to do, and they're going to encourage you, and they're going to sell you on why this is why you want to do it. So it's important to understand the ideas around leadership and how to use them in your organization. So as I said, you need to really build strong teams. That means hiring right, and making sure you train right, but you also have to organize excellent processes. As a leader, your job is to make things work more effectively. Fix the areas that aren't working, improve on them, build on them, and make sure people execute on those. And that's why the environmental or emotional aspects that we'll talk about towards the end of the program become a very important element of how that leader takes that. Now, if you're working for yourself, you are the leader. If you are a salesperson or a marketing person from that perspective, you are a leader and you take charge of your life as well as your professional role. And that's why in that role we really look at people who have maturity and really understand business and the idea of how to make money or how to do things rather than coming from an academic perspective. But you also have to make great decisions and have the intellectual curiosity to say, how do I make it better? And that's the secret a lot of people miss, is they really don't have an appetite or a strong enough drive to really exceed and pay the price for success. Everybody wants to be successful, but a lot of people don't realize there's a price you pay for that, both from a time and effort, energy, and commitment. And I think that's an important aspect. So let me quickly just touch base on these ideas around leadership and management. These are the 10 rules of leadership and management. This is part of building a culture, because if you have a negative culture, you're probably missing some of these elements. So it's important to think about what you're doing in each of these areas so you can focus on improving the quality of your organization. You know, I think all of these are good elements to understand and insist. These top 5 to me are very important because it really allows you to say, okay, yes, no. I like to suggest when I go through this with people to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. Are you an active coach? And I'll spend a little bit of time on that today. Are you maintaining high standards of integrity? Scale of 1 to 5, 5 being great. How do you score yourself? Now the next 5 are also important. And it's, you know, I think number 7 is very important. Show confidence in your people. Score of 1 to 5. Are you letting people know that you have confidence in them to act? Are you available and visible to help them? Number 8, maintain a sense of urgency. Critical in high-performance organizations that everyone has a sense of urgency to achieve whatever their role is, whatever their job function is, you're doing that. Do people in your company have a sense of urgency? Scale of 1 to 5. Evaluate these 10, score it, and then put a game plan together in your mind on paper with your management team and say, how do we correct this? How do we make this part of our culture? So let's go down to people and say, okay, what is leadership and management from a tactical perspective? Well, these are just a few quick 6 ideas around what you need to do. Develop culture and focus. And you have to develop cultural teams. I have been in organizations where there's been negative culture. We've had to turn things around, or so-so culture, but we needed to do some things. We actually organized like one person from each department, and they threw a monthly event together and brought all the employees together for the monthly event. That was an active way to build culture from that perspective. So it's part of the things that we want to work with from that perspective. I think the next thing we want to do is the idea of thinking about activating an aggressive recruitment plan and training plan. Need to bring in positive people, need to bring in positive programs to make that happen. And having the right compensation plans. We're not going to talk about that in my book on compensation. We talk about how compensation is strategic, not tactical. All of those things become critical aspects to move forward in your program. But those are the tactical sides of how do you get high performance. Other traits of high performance culture, they have a clear course. They have a vision, mission, strategies, and everybody in the organization knows this. A client where we spent 5 days in a strategic planning meeting, and all of that information was a result of every employee in the company filling out a SWOT analysis on their organization, and then looking at all those results, looking at what their top priorities are, and then having a meeting in January at the kickoff meeting. We'll have a full-day event sharing ideas, thoughts, mission, vision, and tactics and objectives for the whole year. Very important that everybody in the organization understands the goals and objectives. What are the character of the organization? Are there guiding behaviors? And is there a code of ethic? And do people understand that how we treat each other, how do we treat our customers, how do we treat our vendors? What's the organization? Does your organization give back? Organizations that tend to be high-performing organizations have charities or activities that their employees are involved in, not only for team building and bonding, but to give back to society. Traits of high-performance culture: commitment is unwavering. That means people are committed to their roles. People are motivated to give their best. That means in management meetings, sales meetings, marketing meetings, communication, it's okay to discuss points, to raise your voice, to have passion about what you want. But it's important that commitment to the ultimate code, the ultimate vision and mission is there. And so that tactics and people act accountably and not against each other. Once you walk out of that meeting, everybody's on the same page. And that's why collaboration is important, and we want to make sure that it's okay for people to have high levels of discussion, and that departments may have issues that conflict, but you ought to come back to the common good. And that's why teams have to openly support other teams, and that's why sometimes we like to put together task forces. We have a problem in a certain area, we'll take 1 or 2 people from every department or 2 people from 2 different departments and give them 60 days to work on the resolution and recommendation for a going forward plan. Good ways to bring people together for that common performance factor. Change. Change is accepted. New ideas are important. Fresh products or fresh solutions are important. And people have to be supportive of new technologies that are going to allow you to change the organization. I like to suggest to organizations, do they have a technology plan to make their company more competitive? How are you going to use technology to make your organization more competitive in the future? If you aren't, you may be missed out, and your competitor may move ahead of you. So it's important to look at new ideas and thoughts and make things happen. I like to suggest a mind is like an umbrella. It only works when it's open. And so that's part of high-performance organizations. They're into new ideas. They're into trying new ways to solve old problems. I said coaching was an important element, and I think that's a very important element as far as give back. There's some organizations where there's not a free-flow conversation. People get defensive at those conversations. As a management team, I like to suggest that you need to meet with each of your direct reports at least once a week and provide coaching, feedback, ideas, updates to be able to have that line of communication that everybody knows what's going on. I've had a lot of situations where presidents of organizations and sales managers never talked to each other because they were both busier than heck working on projects, but they were both upset with each other because there was no alignment on goals and objectives or open communication. So it's important that the culture is a feedback-rich idea, that you're coaching on the positives as well as on the negatives. Now, you want to write these down. These are the top 5 factors for managing the culture. And these are the real 5 elements that we've been talking about in all of the issues we've had so far in this session. Get a shared sense of mission or purpose, have a clear and attainable goals, frequent objective feedback or coaching, positive rewards for appropriate performance, and timely support and help when requested. Those 5 become critical elements on saying, are we doing this correctly at every level? It's one thing for corporate leadership to have these kinds of activities, but do other management teams, sub-managers have these same 5 factors? Are they aware of them? And are employees clearly attuned to understanding these 5 elements? So it's culture building is an important element. It doesn't just happen. It's a conscious effort by everybody in the company to say, this is the kind of culture we want, this is the kind of actions and tactics we're going to have, and this is how we have to build all of that. A drive statement happens to be a sales cultural statement. We coined this as a drive statement in that it gets the sales organization on a clear mission, vision for the year. This one just happened to be used. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. We'll dominate Tennessee in XX marketplace within 12 months with a confident approach to customer solutions. Now, several key issues here. There's emotional words in the statement as well as factual, tactical, specific goals. Dominate. That's a very emotional word. In our territory, within 12 months. Specific goal with a confident approach. Not an aggressive approach, not an assertive approach, but a confident approach. Puts a little emotion into the sales team. This is used every day, every week, every month, in every sales meeting, event, so that salespeople begin to understand this is our mission, this is how we make decisions, and this is how we go forward. That's very important in what we're talking about. Personally, in my business, we have a philosophy that was focused on enhancing the relationship with the people we work with, making sure it's profitable for both the client and our company, and 3, liking to have fun with our clients and fun with our business. Those are the 3 kind of philosophical aspects we use in trying to create a culture of performance at Acumen Management. Now, from a tactical perspective, management and leadership have to have some regular themes, and these are the themes that we talk a lot about, we work with our clients on making sure they have a rigors of cadence. Rigors of cadence means in order to build a high-performance culture, things have to happen on an ongoing basis. There's minimum 2 hours a month on sales training. Management meetings every week start at the same time, cover an agenda. Sales meetings start on time, end on time, there's an agenda. Prescriptive performance, that means every job in the company is documented and defined as to what the functions of that job are, how to do that job, and everybody has their own cookbook. We'll talk about cooking a little bit later, but it's important to think of every job function that way. Accountability, discipline, and control, I'll cover in just a moment. Those are really key words that are important to think about in that area. And inspect what you expect. Probably the 4 best words in sales management, but in any leadership position. Inspect what you expect. If you think the salesperson has the ability to present your organization or your company, you better go out and listen to that person do that. Before they go out and sell, make sure they go through an onboarding process so they effectively believe in your company, understand what your company does, and can move forward in that area. One of the last things I want to talk about from an emotional perspective is building belief. One of the jobs in building a high-performance culture in your organization is to build belief. That means storytelling. That means sharing a story with all of your employees about what a great job you did for a certain company. Sometimes we take salespeople out to visit happy customers, just so the happy customer can tell them how great your company is, so salespeople have the emotional bond to sell something. Or we invite that customer into the office to the monthly company meeting and have that customer tell everybody what a great job the company did. And that's why all of these elements are important to get people believing in what you deliver, believing what you have the impact. I just interviewed a potential sales management candidate for a client of ours in California yesterday, and she had an offer to leave, but she didn't because she had a belief of what this company does that she works for, a belief in their vision, a belief in how they work with their clients, and that was a strong emotional bond. And that's a very important element to think about. Now, I mentioned before, discipline, accountability, and control, also high-performance organizations. It's not all touchy-feely, but its emotional aspect is important, but having the discipline that you train on how things are supposed to work, and that every employee is accountable to give a reckoning or explanation for their actions. Nobody slides. There's discipline, accountability, and control is the last piece. Most people think, I say control, they think of micromanagement. That's the farthest thing from my mind. Control is defined as a standard of comparison for checking the results of an experiment or process. That means when you have a high-performance organization, you have a formula, you have a recipe of how every job is to be performed, the activity levels of every job, and you manage and monitor how Ken Thoreson is performing against that standard. And that's the control function. Simply to find out, is Ken performing where he's supposed to be? Is he doing better than the control function? Or do we need to change the recipe for our life and our business? So that's an important element. The last piece that I want to talk about specifically on an operational perspective is putting a plan together. Now, this is a sales and marketing business plan, and these are all the elements you need to think about as far as building a high-performance organization. And having these pieces put together, from account plans to what your metrics or dashboards are, your marketing plan, do you have a value proposition that makes you stand out in the marketplace? Probably the second most important element most companies have. They do not have a good message that makes them stand out in the marketplace. What's their competitive position? What's their training plan? What's their resource plan? All that becomes a real critical element as far as building execution into your roadmap. So those are the tactical things that leaders have to think about from their organization. But I want to talk about you. I want to talk about do you have the right menu? I mentioned earlier about recipes. I have 165 cookbooks. I like to cook as a hobby. It's one of my hobbies that I enjoy doing. So I think it's important because we see a lot of organizations who are not high performers. And what's happening in a lot of those organizations are the individuals are out of balance. They're either personally not feeling well or professionally they're not doing well. But what we find with the right organizations, they have the right balance. They have the right appetizers, they have the right vegetables, they have the right couscous, or they have gelato. And they have the right things put together and the right menu to make sure it all works together. And I think this is why I see a lot of organizations who are doing well. They have the right people, and the people have the right balance in their lives. So one of the ideas I like to suggest you do to have a high-performance culture personally is to develop a theme for your life. Now, quickly and briefly, I'll just tell you a quick story. We all remember 9/11 and what happened that day. I was supposed to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and I couldn't. But I was sitting there in my office and watching, the fire, the towers coming down, the stock market shutting down, people in chaos. Everybody was back on their heels trying to understand what happened. What's going to happen in America? What's going on in my life? What's happening in my business? Well, a few days later, the plane started flying, and during those times, I had talked to a lot of people. I actually ended up in a hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia, waiting to go meet a client. I was on the phone talking to people, talking to clients, talking to friends, talking to associates, and everybody was not doing very well emotionally, personally. And I realized as a leader, I think it's important that I needed to get out of that doldrums. I needed to help other people, but I also needed to help myself. So I wanted to develop a mantra to help me move forward. I'm sharing this with you not as you should use my mantra. I think it's important that each of you have to think about a theme for your life, how you live your life, and what kind of energy you put into your life. So during that time, I just happened to come up with this: take action and stay positive. And I've used that ever since. Very important that year because I said, I've got to stay positive and I got to take action. I got to go do something, make something happen. And we saw that happen as America started to regain its confidence and thought process, that we took action. And we stayed positive that life will be better. Things will get better. And I think it's important that we all think about how we build our lives and how we work with other people on a day-to-day basis. And I think if we have a grounded theme for your life, you will be able to make decisions better. People will know how you make decisions. They'll understand who you are as an individual. So that's why I think it's important to find your balance. I'm going to share with you 3 tips and idea in a minute to really help you make sure that if you're feeling out of balance, what we want to do is add some clarity to your life and add some clarity to your professionalism so that you grow upwards and you have a chance to grow your life on a positive note. So one of the elements we find is that in any individual life, you have various sections. I like to call it the personal pizza. And what normally we would hand this out to everybody in the audience, but if you would like a copy of this, send me an email at my email address, and I'm happy to send you this pizza, or I'll provide it, and we can download it if you want to download this worksheet or this webcast. But we'd like to have you grade yourself on how you're doing on a score of 1 to 7 around friends and family. How are you doing around fitness and health? How would you grade yourself? How about romance or significant other? How do you feel about your net worth? Or are you having fun and recreation? How's your career progressing? Do you feel good about that? Or what's your physical environment or at-home environment and your commitment to personal and spiritual growth? We ask people to take this because we find when we take this example and they circle each of the dots, all of a sudden they can start to see where they feel good about themselves and where they don't feel good. And when people are out of balance, what we find is that all of a sudden we know what to work on. We need to work on maybe net worth ideas. We need to work here on the physical home environment. So it's a great exercise to figure that out. And in the worksheets, it actually gives you tips and ideas of how you can fix some of these elements. From a professional pizza, how's your organization doing on teamwork or work fulfillment or leadership, time management, commitment to personal and professional growth? And what's your focus and discipline on getting your job done? all of these elements are put together can help you start to understand how your life is working together. So it's important. I talked about tips and stress and balance. These are the 5 elements, and we don't have time to go through all of these in detail today, but in our programs we spend some time on each one of these and thinking about how do you plug your energy drains. That's an important element. If you find the people taking away the things that drain the energy on you, you won't feel good about yourself, you'll feel down, and you won't have the energy to move forward. So eliminate your energy drains. Practice extreme care. That means taking care of yourself from an exercise perspective, eating perspective, making sure that you get sleep or you rest well. Eliminate the shoulds in your life. I should have done my sit-ups today. I should have run a mile yesterday. I should do this. Eliminate that. Don't think about the shoulds. Do the coulds. Then create some daily stress balance rituals, whether this is yoga, whether this is meditation, whether this is simply reading a book at night. Find some times where you have personal quiet time to allow you to really control what you want. And then develop your own scorecard. How am I doing on each of these elements so you understand how to move forward? All of these become really critical elements on saying, how do I find a better self? How do I find an opportunity to have better things? Last week on my blog I wrote about life enrichment is yours. It's a good blog that you might want to go back and read. It's how do you build a more successful life, or how do you make sure you have an enriched life? So one of the things I said is, do you have the right balance? Do you have the right menus in place so that you can take a look at the right food and the opportunities? This idea came to me many years ago. My wife and I were actually working on a set of books trying to create a menu for our cooking club, where we have 12 to 14 people coming over to our house. We were planning an Italian dinner, and we were looking at through the cookbooks, coming up with recipes, ideas, bouncing ideas back and forth with each other. It was October in Minnesota. It was cold. It was starting to snow. I was sitting there in the fireplace in my living room. It was a really nice environment. And I started thinking about the analogy of food, ingredients, and life. And this is why the whole idea of coming back and saying, what are you really hungry for, came together. Is that if you have the right ingredients and you know what you're hungry for and you have the right things in life put together, all of a sudden everything lines up. You have the right ingredients to make a cheeseburger really, really good, or you're making a pasta and you want to make it really, really good, and you have recipes and ingredients to do all of that. So you have a guide, you have a plan to do that based on the recipe book. The key issue is, in life, you need to understand what are the ingredients for your personal recipe. And so what I'm suggesting today is that part of being a high-performing individual is you want a big life, not a small life. And that's why I think it's important as we think about your organization or your business that you start to think about having a gourmet life. The whole idea about finding your recipe for success. And I want to share with you 3 ideas around that. But first of all, you have to think about, what are you hungry for? Well, there's looking at your menu in your life of what are the dreams you have. You know, you want to think about the experiences you have or you want to have, the bucket list. I always say when it's over, when your life is over, it's the experiences you had that made your life. And what are the important ideas that you want to achieve? What are things that you think are really important to you that you're passionate about to be successful? So you have to start thinking about, what are the ingredients to achieve those? What's the combinations? What's your recipe in order to really ultimately be successful? And that's the important element. Life success is not income, not net worth. It's putting everything together so that you're in the right balance. So let's talk about the 3 ideas. Step 1, in your self menu, you have an impact. That's number 1. You have an impact on others. And that's an important element to think about in putting together your choice. So that's the first thing I would tell you to write down. You have an impact. Another Thorsonian theme is you think about the organization and think about your life and having a passion. Create a difference in your surroundings and develop a passion. Have an impact on the lives of other people. The more you impact the lives of other people, the more successful you will be. It will give back to you both in satisfaction and it'll give back to you in personal success. The picture you have in front of you is a man who has impacted my life, but more importantly impacted the lives of thousands of people. Never made a lot of money. He was a Boy Scout camp director in West Central Wisconsin. Sam. Sam had an opportunity. I met him as a very young man, but he worked at a Boy Scout camp for many, many years. I had the opportunity to work with him for one summer. I knew him for years before as I went up through the scouting ranks, and he was at my Eagle Scout banquet. I got to know him a little bit, but I got an opportunity to work for one summer with Sam. I found out about his discipline, accountability, and control. I found out about his need to have fun. In fact, his saying is, if it isn't fun, it isn't scouting. I told him many years ago I changed that to, if it isn't fun, it isn't selling, but it's an important element to think through that he had that. Well, about 12 years ago, I was invited to come back and spend a weekend with Sam. He was old. He was retired at that point. Because I was a former camp counselor, they invited all these people back. I didn't know what to expect. I got in a car with a friend of mine who was also a camp counselor many years ago, and we drove down the Mississippi from Minneapolis down to La Crosse, Wisconsin, crossed the Mississippi, and drove into Camp Decorah. Not knowing what to expect, we pulled up to the mess hall, and there were about 15 people there at the time. And there were people from Hong Kong, Switzerland, Florida, Maine, and throughout the Midwest. People had come back from all over to spend the weekend with Sam because he touched their lives in some way. He had an impact on people, and it's important. And I think it's an important aspect you think about what you're doing along that line. So let's look at number 2. Number 2 is develop creativity, break out, and grow. Too many times we live lives of going through and executing plans as we thought they are and how they should be, but we're not creative. The good news is you can create your creativity. It's not an art, or it's not something you were given. It's a trained skill. And there are a lot of ideas of how to do this, a lot of books on it. Today I just want to share with you these ideas. 1, track your ideas. Just write them down. You never know when an idea will come to you. Inquiring minds want to know. Be curious about opportunities and look at how things work. Learn about different ideas or different things. That means studying unique ideas or different things as you go, or just observing patterns. Don't follow your set patterns. If you shave in the morning, start on the left side instead of your right side. If you floss your teeth, start at the top, not on the bottom. Do different things in order to create a mindset of just being curious and be open. As I said, a mind is like an umbrella. It only works when it's open. One of the stories that came out is the person who was taking a shower in Germany happened to be looking at the shower head, and he realized that he could fix the Hubble spacecraft, which was a big telescope a few years ago, simply by looking at that shower head. So he was patient in his observations. I also recommend you look at hobbies so that you can relax your mind. And that's part of being in balance also, is making sure you find things to do. I enjoy reading cookbooks at night sometimes, or putting menus and parties together. We just had 24 people over last night, or Friday night, for an appetizer party, Christmas party. Great fun putting together food and hobbies and appetizers. I enjoyed that. It was a break from the other things I do, and that adds to my creativity, I think, in what I do. Improves your sense of humor, be a risk taker. Putting all of those things together are critical, and take a course on this, read a book. You can get more creative, and therefore you'll have a better life. The third step is be real, be more, and it's important that you are warm. I have a gentleman I met many years ago. He was about 99 when he passed away, but every time you saw Jim, he always asked you, how are things in your life today? And he paid attention, and he looked me in the eye, and he was interested. He did that with everybody. He was real, and he was warm. Too many times we go past the relationship aspect with people. Make a commitment to be warm and be more and be real. And one of the things I like to play in our organizations and keynotes when I have more time is help you name your restaurant. Everybody understands restaurants. Everybody has a favorite restaurant. I actually have a little restaurant card I hand out, and we work on developing your purpose in life, your passion in life, and your principles. And we tie that to what's the purpose of the restaurant, meaning you are the restaurant. You are the restaurant, so we want to find out what's the purpose of the restaurant. What's your passion around the restaurant, and what are the principles that you're going to run that restaurant on? That helps you define your purpose, your passion, and your principles. I sometimes talk about the attitude of gratitude and making sure that you want to make sure you have a great attitude and perception of how you work with people. I have this wall of recognition, a passion of impact, I like to call it sometimes, of people I've met over the years, and I add to this every once in a while, of people who are warm and more. Probably haven't never heard of Basil Harris. I have a nephew in Auburn, New Hampshire, who did a video on Basil. Basil would go to the hospice once a week with his guitar and sing to the patients and the families on his own time. Interesting idea. You may have heard of Millard Fuller, top of the list. He started a little program in Atlanta. He was a contractor. It's called Habitat for Humanity. Big idea, got it going. He had an opportunity here to be real and be more. Lots of stories we could tell you if we had more time, but it's important to think about while we have it. So as we start to come to the end of the program, I want to take these 4 elements and say, in our world, why do winners win? Well, we believe high-performance organizations, high-performance individuals have these 4 elements. They create optimism. They have a passion. They have a belief that things will be better. There was a study done a long time ago with people who had a lot of talent but weren't successful. And they had a lot of ideas of people who maybe worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, but were never successful. But when they studied the people who were successful and who had talent or who worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and were successful, they found the underlying idea between those people were the people who were successful had optimism that things would work out. Number 2, they recognize fear as opportunity. When they get a little nervous, they get a little scared, they push through. They recognize that when that feeling in your stomach goes, I don't know, they make a good decision and they execute. They build dreams. So they have their dreams set for them and they have an idea of where they're going in life. Everybody talks about goal setting. Big idea, but it's true. If you haven't read the books on that, on the great books around those elements, go ahead and build your dreams. Every year I sit down and write goals on 7 different issues. Every year, I've done it for 30 years. I don't hit them all the time. Sometimes they're moving targets, but eventually I do. Reduce your frustration. I just said this the other day to a friend I'm trying to help. I said, recognize that the day-to-day little burps that we hit, bumps in the road that we have, are simply steps up the ladder. You take the next step, overcome that one, take the next step and overcome that, and don't get frustrated by it. Just say, okay, I'll get through that. Laugh through it. I'm going to get through that one. I'm going to get through that one, so you reduce frustration. So winners win by following these 4 simple principles. Create optimism, recognize fear as opportunity, build dreams, and reduce frustration. So think about this. Think about this as you go through your 2014 planning and every other year planning. Generally in the life of an individual, you sometimes have 18 months if you're in the right position at the right time to achieve what you want to achieve. Because it takes sometimes long to do things, sometimes it's shorter, but you have an opportunity. In your organization today, you may have the opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity of a lifetime during the lifetime of the opportunity. The lifetime of the opportunity is only so short. Take advantage of the opportunity of a lifetime during the lifetime of the opportunity. You may only have the next 18 months to achieve what you want. So take advantage of that. Feel that passion, take that opportunity, and make sure that as you build your organization, you take advantage of the opportunity of your lifetime right now during the lifetime of the opportunity. So this is my sales creed as I start to close out on the program, and I'll turn it back to Tony in a minute. I like to read this, and if we had everybody in the line, I would have you all read it out loud with me in our programs and our sales kickoff meetings. We like to do this. And so I would say, I, Ken Thoreson, put customers ahead of company and self. I remain flexible and quick to respond. I value innovation and creativity. I expect to win to be the best, to work smarter, harder, and longer. I treat opportunities with urgency. I communicate openly with honesty and integrity. I show pride and loyalty to my company, and I derive motivation from my achievement. All of those are the elements that we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. It's important that you have your own sales creed, your own marketing creed, your own company creed. These are ideas that I think are important to drive performance overall. So I like to say in closing, taste it all. Think about all of the ingredients you have, the things you need to put together in your life to say, how am I going to have a high-performance life? How am I going to have a gourmet life? And how am I going to find my menu for success and be able to translate that into my organization so my organization will have a high-performance organization? All that becomes critical. So I want to leave you with 3 little words. The difference between average performers and high performers are that high performers do what's expected and then some. They're good friends, good neighbors, and then some. They can be treated, they can take care of you in an emergency, and then some. They meet their obligations fairly and squarely, and then some. So I like to suggest that these people make the world a better place, and then some. Tony, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Wonderful job. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. What an amazing job, just taking a look at the individual and creating a holistic look to improve them, and start with the individual and then go outward through the organization. So thank you for your time. I'd like to remind everybody listening and watching to go ahead and type your questions into the bar on the right, and we'll go ahead and address those accordingly. One question that has come up is, if my company has a negative culture, how do I go about fixing
that? Good one. Several things. It depends upon what you mean by negative culture, but let's just make an assessment. Let's assume that the employees are talking amongst themselves but not talking to management. People are complaining about issues but not fixing issues. I think if you recognize that as a leader, the important element is to start on small things. You're not going to come in one day and snap your fingers and say, I want everybody to be positive and informative. I think you need, as a leader, to do some simple starting aspects. And one of the elements I've recommended in a couple situations that have faced that way, Tony, is that we started lunch with the president. So once a week or once a month, depending upon the size of the company, the president would have lunch with a variety of employees from various departments. They mix the employees up based upon maturity in some cases or the departments they worked in. And they had topics, and it was twofold. The president had an opportunity to sell, in this case, her philosophy, her goals for changing culture. But in a small group, she was also opening to listening to people, finding out what was going on in their minds, their business, what they thought of the company, what they thought, how the company should operate. And over time, communication skills picked up, and this is an important element. So over time, we had a chance to be able to work with people, and it takes time to get trust. And then once we got some of the issues out on the table, we could fix them. And so that's part of the element we really got into, is we had a chance then to fix some of the things that needed to be fixing to change the culture. And when people saw that decisions were being made, things were being fixed, and yet we kept having the lunches, we actually changed from the breakfast meetings eventually. But that's one thing you could do.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think it kind of ties really well into some of the points in your presentation about, that consistency and that weekly meeting and accountability there. So very good. Thank you. It doesn't look like there are any more questions.
All right.
So, yeah. So once again, thank you for your time, Ken, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening and watching to our presentation today, Building a High-Performance Culture with Ken Thoreson. This has been recorded, so this will be sent to everybody along with the presentation as well. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact Ken directly, and we'll go ahead and close the webinar at this point. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody.